Okay, hi, I'm Ailie. I'm also going to read this because I think it might help me stick to 6 minutes. So, the People's Bank of Govanhill is a local currency project that grew quite organically through my time as artist in residence at Govanhill Baths. At that time, I was working on a project that envisaged various alternative futures for Govanhill and for the Baths. And so through doing that work, I started talking to people about ideas of community ownership, things like how will new technologies affect the way we live. And eventually we got to talking about the idea of an independent currency in Govanhill and what form might that take, what would it look like, how might it impact the Govanhill community. So I printed this set of Govanhill notes. They could be exchanged within Govanhill Baths, and it was really just intended as a one-off, the planting of a seed of an idea. But people were really keen to know what was going to happen with them next and how it could move forwards. So I started doing this series of pop-up experiments on an invented currency, doing things in a pretty ad hoc kind of trial and error way, holding different types of exchange events and looking at what sorts of things people might want to exchange. Would that be advice? Was it time? Was it produce? Were it skills, language, community actions? And seeing what works, who it would work for. One of the things that I've been doing is to hold these discussion events in the street, popping up in some fairly unlikely venues, trying to get people talking really, taking this quite kind of experimental approach, and it's kind of grown into this, what I now see as a kind of collaborative research project on community currency with a fairly broad definition of currency. So a really big focus of that work has been to widen that conversation and just to talk about like what do we mean by currency and what might an alternative economy look like, but also what are the things that people are already doing, that sharing, caring and commoning that contribute to our well-being, the stuff that keeps us afloat, the things that allow us, a community to survive. So what you realise is that there's already a really thriving and strong alternative economy in this community. So one of the things that I really love about that is that not only does it allow us to expand our notion of currency, thinking about what we have to offer and where we place value, but it also kind of starts to tell a different story, and a story that runs counter to the usual narrative. So in an area that's very often described as deprived, it lets us talk about Govanhill as a place with a really strong economy, considering the diversity and richness of the local community as a form of wealth. And it's well proven that diversity creates resilience. And so in trying to gain a better understanding of this, what you might call the below the water level economy, I've been inviting people to take part in mapping workshops, asking people to map their own economic activity, the economy of sharing, exchanging, pooling of resources, whether that's volunteering, babysitting, gifting, borrowing, shared meals, community activism, caring. And we're gradually building up a bigger picture of activity, looking at how people work together, where the connections are, but also where the gaps are, and how things might interconnect a bit more. So having this visual approach has been really quite important. It doesn't rely on written language, it doesn't even rely on holding a pen, which has been quite important for some groups of people, and the symbols have kind of evolved. When I started doing this, I had this set of 4 symbols, and every time I kind of do this, people say, oh, well, maybe there should be a symbol for that, maybe there should be a symbol for this. So the symbols get added, and there's a sort of growing set of symbols denoting various different things and different types of exchange. So the project has, I guess, particular relevance to groups of women because it's about mapping and valuing things like unpaid work, emotional labour, and often labour that's not very visible. So while that's not exclusively women's work, women still do a disproportionate amount of unpaid labour. But because of this, are often extremely good at building networks, supporting each other, and I think understand the need for a different type of economy. So, as a project, the People's Bank of Govanhill is at what I feel is quite an exciting point. We're about to become a constituted group. So initially, it's a project that began with me driving things, but always with an intention that it should be much more collective. So we're writing our constitution, and that includes a set of guiding principles that have been crowdsourced on the streets of Govanhill. So things like currency is not capital, we should help people to help people to help people, currency should circulate, not accumulate. And one of the things that we plan to do is to open a new type of community swap shop sometime soon. And also talking to Brian and Jangling Space about possibly sharing a space, so we'll see what happens there as well. And that would be a space for sharing and exchange in multiple forms. So all of those kind of ideas, skills, knowledge, produce, language, music, and that list would continue to grow. And that we would also continue to map that sharing economy and looking at developing a digital element to the project, but doing it in a way that continues to be accessible and usable for everybody. I might be going too fast now. I guess what it's about really is opening up a space of possibilities. It's not just about reinventing or reforming the monetary system, it's about rethinking our social relations when we exchange, when we transact, and asking questions like, how do we create a more caring economy, how do we survive together and take care of our natural and cultural commons, and how do we create a sense of emotional investment so that we're not reduced merely to consumers by our economy. So what feels really exciting about seeing all of these projects together is that I think it feels to me like there's a real groundswell, and there's like all of these kind of projects are happening, and we're really kind of getting a sense of how to change things. And I think we're really rethinking our social relations in terms of what we have to exchange, how we treat each other fairly, how we redefine our ideas of economy and value the things that are really important. And it's kind of, it's just, as we connect with each other more, it's getting better. So I guess I see this as quite a long-term process of discovery and learning. Oh, I'll stop.